Hi there. In this video we'll be looking at American Kenpo stance set number 2. Welcome back. I'm Andy Seaton, Chief Instructor of Combat Fusion Martial Arts, where we give effective martial arts training to the community. If this is your first time to our channel, or if you're a returning viewer who has not yet subscribed, please do so. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be told when we put up new videos. Differing from stance set number 1, stance set number 2 contains some of the more specialist stances and the use of hands and arms in specific guard positions. Those specific guard positions teach us angle matching, counterbalancing, defence in confined spaces, the correct checking of a downed opponent, and defence whilst retreating, advancing or pivoting. Stance set number 2 also teaches us the correct distribution of body weight, the use of transitionary stances when advancing, retreating or ducking, how to use the opponent's body as a springboard, and how to turn a defence into an offence. So let's get into this by first looking at stance set number 2 in its entirety, first slowly and then at a normal pace. Now we've looked at the set itself, let's break it down and look at each stance on an individual basis.
So the first stance we're going to be talking about today is the attention stance. This is a single dimension stance. It has the dimension of height only. It has a narrow or small base of support which equals a high centre of gravity. This gives for good mobility but poor stability. It is also the first of 2 single dimension stances we'll be discussing in this video. This stance has a weight distribution of 50-50. Standing upright, your arms are by your sides, your feet are together and your knees are bent comfortably. The next stance we're going to talk about is the horse stance. There are 3 basic types: the training horse stance, meditating horse stance, and the fighting horse stance. The meditating and training horse stances have two dimensions, height and width. The fighting horse stances, left and right, also have two dimensions, but these are height and depth. The weight distribution in the horse stance is 50-50. Gauging a horse stance from an attention stance, we pivot on the balls of our feet and throw our heels out, followed by pivoting on the heel to throw the toes out, and then again pivot on the balls of the feet to throw the heels out again, bending the knees and relaxing to the stance comfortably. The feet should be approximately shoulder width apart, on parallel lines to 12 o'clock, and the knees bent comfortably. The next stance we're going to discuss is the neutral bow. This is a three-dimensional stance, having height, width and depth. Its weight distribution is 50-50. The neutral bow is the point of reference for all other combat effective stances. If our neutral bow is incorrect, then all our other stances will also be incorrect. The depth of this stance is found by the use of the heel-knee line that runs between 3 and 9. Width is found by the use of the toe-heel line running between 12 and 6. Both of your feet should be on a 45-degree angle to the center line for correct formation of this stance. Height is found from bending the knees to a point of comfort. The forward bow. This also is a three-dimensional stance. Its weight distribution is 60-40. It is important to remember that when pivoting into a forward bow from a neutral bow, the front foot must remain on a 45-degree angle to the center line. Your hips and shoulders should turn onto a line that runs between 3 and 9, but not past this line. Your body weight shifting forward and diagonally down. The back foot pivots to point towards 12 o'clock, whilst the back leg acts as a bracing angle. The cat stance. We have two basic types, 45-degree cat stance and a 90-degree cat stance. In stance set 2, we use the 45-degree cat stance. Both stances have 3 dimensions, and both stances have a weight distribution of 10-90. The position of the rear foot to the center line denotes whether you are in a 45 or a 90-degree cat stance.
From heels touching, replace the toe with the heel.
Bend the rear leg sitting into the stance like sitting into a chair. Angle match the shape of the upper body with the rear hand and forearm, and the front leg with the front hand, wrist and arm. If you can execute small circles with your front foot just touching the floor, you have achieved the correct weight distribution. The front foot is then light and ready to use. The crane stance. This is the second of our two single dimension stances. Like the attention stance, the crane stance only has the dimension of height. Its weight distribution is 100-0. This stance is labelled left or right from the supporting leg. This is also denoted in the weight distribution. Our guard in this stance gives us an amplified sense of awareness of balance. However, we would not stay in this stance for a protracted amount of time, and in reality our guard would be much closer to our body utilizing the outer rim principle. The wide kneel stance. This is a 3-dimensional stance with a weight distribution of 50-50. In the stance set 2, it is teaching us to duck under an attack. This is utilizing a collapsed neutral bow. The rear leg collapses down on a 45-degree angle with the knee ending 1 hand span from the floor. The guard angle matching the rear leg with the rear arm again provides balance through an amplified sense of awareness. As in the crane stance, we would in reality use a tighter guard to our body, employing once again the outer rim principle. The close kneel stance. This again is a 3-dimensional stance with a weight distribution of 50-50. This stance is formed from a collapsed forward bow. The weight distribution reverts from 60-40 to 50-50 when entering this stance. The guard angle again angle matches the body. with the front hand and arm matching the upper body and the rear hand and arm matching the upper thigh of the rear leg. The rear knee is placed 1 to 2 inches from the floor. This gives a good example of guarding when in confined spaces. The reverse bow. This also is a 3-dimensional stance. Its weight distribution is 40-60. This stance is basically the same formation as a forward bow. However, whereas a forward bow's lead foot stays on its 45-degree angle to the center line, in a reverse bow we must allow both feet to pivot from the 45 degrees to the center line to 135 degrees, thereby maintaining our toe to heel line, leaning away from 12 o'clock. The lead arm is guarding down the lead leg and protecting the kidneys. The rear arm is guarding and covering the head. The convex stance or diamond stance and the concave stance both are 2-dimensional stances, only having height and width but no depth. Their weight distribution is 50-50. The convex stance utilizes the heels of the feet as pinching weapons when leaping forward onto a downed opponent. The stance also facilitates us with the ability to reach down between our stance and strike to an opponent who is below us. The concave stance works in conjunction with the convex stance. After striking to a downed opponent in a convex stance, we can utilize our hands to reach around an opponent's face and bring them up against our knees in a concave stance to help facilitate a neck break. An important aspect to remember when executing a concave stance is not to allow the knees to overly knock together. The knees only need to be shoulder width apart to jam your opponent's scapulars as you apply the neck break. To bring the knees too close together will compromise the structure of your stance and make you unstable. Stance set 2 gives 3 examples of twisted stances. The front crossover to the front crossover to the rear, and the front twist stance. These 3 twisted stances all are 3-dimensional and all have a weight distribution of 50-50. The front crossover to the front uses a step out maneuver. The front crossover to the rear uses a pivot out maneuver. The front twisted stance is entered by a lead leg retreating step that threads behind the rear knee.
Well, that's stance set number 2. There's still a lot to discover with that set, but as normal in American Kenpo, we like a lot of those discoveries to be made by the students themselves. As always at Combat Fusion Martial Arts, we encourage you to investigate, experiment and ascertain. Well, thank you for watching this video from Combat Fusion Martial Arts, and don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so and hit that notification bell so you'll get told when we're putting up new videos, and before you leave, please give us a like. This is Andy Seetherton, Combat Fusion Martial Arts, saying goodbye.